In this episode, Carlo and I talk about our journeys to pursue the Certified Scrum Master credential. Take a listen. Well, let's kind of wrap up that particular question with the last certification, which you and I both have, which is the Certified Scrum Master. And I'll kind of start it off because I had for a long time, as I mentioned before, I always had students, mentees, connections, like which one should I get, the PMI ACP or the CSM? And again, my answer would be is what is, as you say, the flavor in your organization. It's best to talk the same talk. But it was still nagging at me that, I didn't know enough about what it means and what it takes to get the CSM. So I signed up for a class. I signed up for 2 classes, actually. The first one was miserable. And that's just me being a judgy trainer. It was just awful. I was like, I can't finish. It's only a 2-day class and I can't finish
Coming from you, Crystal, it means a lot. If it's miserable, now you can deal with a lot. So you're quite versatile. So coming from you, that sounds like no-go criteria. So that sounds like a good warning to everybody right there.
Yeah. Instead of saying you who not to go to, I will tell you who I ended up with. And he was a great trainer. Oh my gosh, he was just fantastic. I was absolutely excited to have this trainer. I'll go ahead and give him props. His name is John Miller. And it was so fun. I mean, I retook the whole 2 days, but it was strictly about the Scrum framework. So I just want to make sure people are clear about that. There was no prerequisite. It was just pay your money, sign up, pay your money. And, if you have some introduction to Agile, you should know at this point, the most popular framework that's widely used is the Scrum framework. And so the Scrum framework is guided by, 3 specific roles, 4 specific ceremonies, and I think 3, 4, 5 like specific artifacts that you create. And it was just easier to pick up, but it didn't get into the technicality like we did in the PMI ACP, where we were talking about actually how to use, planning poker and actually getting the conversation about story points. It was just learning about these frameworks. And when I because it was such a delightful experience, I wasn't upset that I felt like it was, short or, light, so to speak, because there are other pathways. I just want to clarify to other people, if you're serious about the Scrum practice, you don't just stop there at the CSM. You go to the Certified Scrum Product Owner. You keep going in those conversations. And of course, there's yet another Scrum type of certification called the Professional Scrum Master, PSM, and there's level 1 and level 2. So, but we don't have time for that kind of conversation. But the more popular one when it comes to the Scrum framework, I would say CSM first, and then people might consider the PSM if they want to, go through a much tougher experience. But, the CSM open book, you don't need, it's not proctored, it's open internet. You have a time limit, but, take the exam, you have the CSM, but it's not that proof that you have worked in the Scrum framework. Right. So I just want to clarify for people around that. So I want to see if there was anything that you had wanted to add to that, Carlo.
No, I think that you covered it. I mean, it's very much alike the scaled agile certifications, the CSM, the way that you described it, because for that reason, and that's why I like the ACP, is because it puts up front that to be even qualified. And so I know when I'm looking at another PMI ACP, I know that person must have submitted a repertoire of hours already. I don't know that about the CSM. I don't know about the SAFE. But what I do know is that there are other people, other Wookiees out there that want what they want. They want the CSM. They want it because they don't know all the internal details behind getting them. They recognize the name, they recognize the brand. There might be somebody that graduated from University of St. Mary's in San Antonio, Texas, but because everybody recognizes the name Harvard, that person must be better, right? Because they've got the brand recognition. So it's up to the person and what their journey is. But yes, definitely, I agree with you, Crystal. The CSM is out there. I mean, get it done, get it knocked out of the way. Yeah, I got it, but you're going to have so much more, in my opinion, rigor and knowledge about the overall agile experience because from the ACP, because it covers Kanban and because it covers XP and because it covers all these other areas, CSM doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
It's more parochial in that way. It's more in that one particular lane. But again, that's what what they were looking for. Well, then okay, good. What happens? You spend a week and you got the thing and you have it now. And I'm not trying to patronize it. I'm saying, if you go after it, go everything that you want to, full throttle. But just be aware that, like I said, some of them have a little bit more rigor in them as opposed to others. But all employers outside of our PM lane may not understand and recognize what those differences are or what it took for you to get those. So,
right.
I would just also say that, what helped me a lot, and I wish I'd read this before, is I did finally read Scrum by Jeff Sutherland, the book that's out there.
Mm-hmm.
And if a person, I think, wants to really get into the philosophy of what happened up in Utah and Snowbird, get the book, because it talks a lot about, and I didn't realize I'm a former veteran. Well, I am a veteran, not a former veteran, I'm a former Marine. And it talks about the decision-making cycle, the OODA loop, observe, orient, decide, and act, that was developed by Lieutenant Colonel Boyd in the Vietnam War. He's an Air Force pilot. And basically, Jeff Sutherland latched on to the OODA loop from Colonel Boyd and wanted to come up with the most economic decision-making cycle for project management. And so he leads off with that in one of the first or second chapters. And he starts going into a lot of very common sense things that leads to the development of what we understand as Agile today. And it reads as a narrative. It's really easy to read. It's just a weekend or so. And it's not going to be as didactic or schoolhousey as having to go through and learn something for a test per se. This is going to be like what undergirds the philosophy and how he came up with this stuff and why he came up. And he's like, oh, this is much better. And this is why, Gantt charts don't make sense anymore. They're not projecting in real time, the way that, a daily stand-up would be, and so on. So I would just say give it a quick breeze through if you're, got some time. You're going to go on a long journey. No one's doing that anymore. But Scrum by Jeff Sutherland. I don't, get any royalties for plugging it. Just saying it might be worth anyone's time.
I might do that. I just so happen to do have a Vermont trip planned, so I'm excited about that. Where I'm going to try to. I'm a sleeper when my husband drives, so I'm going to try to stay awake and keep him company.
Right.
And hopefully that book will keep me awake. So.
Oh, well, I mean, I'm not plugging it. It's a little bit of it is a page turner. And when you're reading it, you're like, this makes so much sense.
You're the second person who said that. Okay. I'm convinced.
Yeah.
I hope that this episode, you have more insight about the various Agile certifications, especially the CSM credential. And perhaps pick up that Scrum book by Jeff Sutherland. It's a page turner.